when all else fails, there's one thing that we always have to remember when interacting with people, and it's these simple words. Becoming is better than being. Forwards. Yes. And that is why we consider ourselves to be a work in progress. It means that we are never complete, and there's always that chance to become someone better.
Yes. It allows you the ability to be comfortable while you're making mistakes, and you get to accept yourself for who you are.
Yes, we are a work in progress. Hi, I'm AX.
I am your host-in-chief, GK.
And
Dictator-in-chief.
Chris M.
Welcome to the show. So, before we get into our discussions, and today our discussion is going to be deep. We're going to start by having a fun game, which is what's proving to slowly become a fan favorite. It's called the game Trip Up. And basically the whole aim of this game is to ask questions to your opponent or to the person opposite you with the aim to trip them up, for them to not get the answer. So it's a competition between the two of you. The person who gets the most wins. Simple as it. So each of us have been selecting a number of questions that we'll each give to each person, okay? So we'll start Chris M to ask AX, and then we'll move from there.
And then me to you,
Yes.
GK.
Yes.
All right.
AX, are you ready?
Yes.
Who is the fastest man in Africa?
Omanyala?
Correct.
Okay.
How many main types of fire extinguishers are there in the world?
Are you joking?
How many
Main
main types?
What do you
So there's
mean main types of
and not
what?
main types.
Yeah.
I like how
wait,
you
wait,
gave
wait.
that
Is a fire
description like
hydrant
there's
a
gonna be
fire
something.
extinguisher as well?
Is it? No,
Yes
it's not
and
a
no.
main type.
But are you sure it's connected to a main water line?
That does not make. That's not why it's a
Okay,
main
fine,
type.
fine,
Okay.
fine. I don't know. 5.
Wrong. 6.
I was thinking
It's
6.
foam, water, carbon,
Oh,
carbon
you-
dioxide, powder. That's it. Main types.
You're talking about the science.
He's
of
talking about
extinguishing
the
a fire.
material, the chemicals.
Yeah. So it's foam, water, carbon dioxide, powder, water mist, and wet chemicals. Last question.
Okay.
How many Kenya Premier League titles
come on.
have Gor Mahia won?
I don't know.
Wild guess.
7,
Higher,
10,
higher,
20?
19.
What?
Wrong. Yes,
Ogalo.
Ogalo, 19 Premier League titles.
I knew that. Come on, AX.
Okay, football's not my thing. If you were to ask me a question about law, I would be in my element.
So, Christian, why don't I give you my questions?
Let's go.
Okay. Number 1. Which is the only country that is not required to name itself on its postage stamps?
Yeah?
What?
Exactly as I said it.
What
Which is the only country
that is not required to name itself
on its postal
So like Kenya, you have
For
Kenya Postal
example,
Service.
postage stamps. So the stamps, like you know, if you send someone a stamp, it'll be written there, Kenyan Postal Service or something. So which country is the only one that is not required to put its name in the postal stamp?
I don't know. England.
Basically correct. It's the UK. Well,
Shut up the
I
dog.
knew that one. I knew that.
that
No, I knew.
surprised me. Okay, next one. What is the most popular first name in the world? If you get one of the top 3, no. If you get one of the top 2, I'll be very impressed.
You can do this.
In the world.
In the world, most popular first name.
Enrique.
First name.
Oh, I was thinking Mexico, but what? First name, yeah.
Dingo, China.
Think about it in
Yeah,
terms of
Dingo.
demography.
Popular.
Like
I know
China's
Patel
a
is
billion
like the
people.
21st most.
You know Patel is number 21.
Yeah,
Then
this one.
but I'm asking you for number 1.
Number 1.
Can I guess?
David.
Mohammed or
Now,
Lee
Mohammed is number 3.
or Lee.
She's using something called the Big Bang Theory as her tool of access.
First of all,
And
no,
she's
I am
wrong.
not.
So the
No,
number
I am
one-
not.
The number 1 name is Maria. That is the most.
So then
female.
wrong.
Has
When I thought
you are correct,
Enrique
but I
this
had to
side.
push you
Sorry,
the other way.
it's female?
It's female.
You mean to say-
61 million people have the name Maria, apparently. Then the second name is Nushi.
Okay.
I didn't even know it was a name.
How
And
do
the
you spell
third name,
Nushi?
Nushi. It must be Japanese or
Are
something.
you sure it could be any? All we know is that it's not English.
It's not English. It's not from our knowledge.
Or
And the
Spanish.
third name is Mohammed.
Mohammed,
Okay. And finally, third question. It was in which year and in what world event that every country had at least one female athlete represented? This is girl power.
Ask that question again. In which year and?
It was in which year
And
and
what
what
event?
global event that every country had at least one female athlete represented?
I'm tempted to say the Olympics.
Sorry, like one woman for the represent
For each country.
not broken down by like sport, but just like if Team Kenya
each
has
country.
one woman, even
Yeah,
if she's
yeah.
running
Oh.
one event.
Tick. Exactly.
Does that make it easier?
It did. Okay, I'll tell you, got one part of that correct.
It's the Olympics, right?
It's the Olympics.
Yeah.
So now, which year?
Which year? The most progressive. I mean, we're progressing as we go, Cindy. 2020 Olympics.
2020 Olympics. I really am very sad by your lack of trust in the human race. But you're not that wrong. It's 2012. 2012 was the year in which
London Olympics. Okay.
was the year in which every country had at least one woman in their Olympic
Wait,
team.
you mean to tell me that
So
since
it's been
then?
200 years basically. Now since then, I guess it's no longer a record if you have every country represented.
So that's the first instance
That
where
every country competing had a woman represented.
Okay.
Okay,
so it's my
AX,
turn. Okay,
choose who
decide.
you're gonna
No,
ask.
no, decide amongst yourself.
I'll answer. I've
All
not
right.
answered anything yet.
Question number one. Iwan Rheon, who played Ramsay Bolton in Game of Thrones,
Okay.
was almost cast as which character?
It makes sense for him to be Joffrey. It makes sense for him to be Joffrey. I'm gonna say Jon Snow. No, I'm gonna say Joffrey.
It was Jon Snow.
Oh no!
Okay, question number two. Who is the only player to have scored a hat trick in the Premier League, Champions League, and FA Cup? To my knowledge, there are three. If you name one of them, I will give you
Cristiano
the prize.
Ronaldo is one of them.
That's not one of the answers I have, Chris.
He is not one of them.
Ask
then
that question
Thierry
again.
Henry.
Okay, name a player who has scored a hat trick in the Premier League, Champions League, and FA Cup.
I hate that you picked a topic that I actually should know.
And you said Henry, and it's not
said-
Henry.
She's not responded when I said Henry.
That's not the name I have. No,
Oh, you have three.
I have three names. Yes,
And Henry is not in
it's
that.
not one
Henry
of
and
them.
no Cristiano. Wayne Rooney.
Gigs.
Those are the names.
I thought so.
Who?
Yossi Benayoun and Harry Kane. I thought Harry Kane.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, that was a hurricane.
Question number 3. Who finished 9th in the 2019-2020 Premier League season?
Who finished what?
2019, 2020.
2 years ago at 9th.
Arsenal were 8th.
Who finished 9th? No.
Arsenal, no, 2019, 2020, not 2020, 2021. So, but still Arsenal were 8th. Who finished? Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Sheffield United.
Oh,
yeah.
they were
Then
relegated
they're
the
relegated
next
the following
season. Okay,
season. Yeah.
okay,
All right.
fine.
Do I
fair
ask Chris
I don't
M?
like you very much.
Do we
Yes,
go
ask
this
Chris
way?
M,
All
ask
right.
Chris M.
Question number 1 for you, Chris M. Who is the only WWE superstar who has seized the Intercontinental Championship 8 times?
AX, you're savage.
8 times.
8
I know
times.
Chris Jericho has it 9 times.
Oh, okay. Well,
Just say that name.
you're right. Yeah.
Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
I
But
really
it's
thought
9
you were
times.
being
But yeah, let's
Okay.
That was a trip up.
Question number 2. Which country is the only one to have played in every World Cup?
Argentina.
Brazil.
Oh, I was gonna say.
Were they?
Yeah,
Brazil
since the
probably, yeah.
beginning.
See, they're the home.
It was Uruguay who was also.
Uruguay hosted it. So I was gonna say
Okay,
Uruguay,
so-
but okay.
All right.
Fair
Question number 3. In what game is love a score?
Tennis.
Yeah.
Tennis. That's really easy.
How is that easy? That is not common
That's
knowledge.
very easy.
It is not
So I got
common knowledge.
AX,
Two
you
out of
got
three.
2 out of 3.
Yeah.
AX, are you ready?
Yes.
You are a self-proclaimed savant of Western history, especially with regards
First
to
of all-
our colonizers'
First of
history.
all, you are the one proclaiming
Especially
like
with
savant
regards
nature.
in our colonizers' history. So I'll ask you this
Well.
question. In 1647, what famous event was abolished by Parliament?
I don't know. That's a very specific year. What was it?
Christmas. Christmas was abolished by
Oliver Cromwell.
by Parliament in the year 1647.
Oliver Cromwell.
Okay, now let's bring it home. Kenya has had 7 attorney generals in our nation's history since independence. Can you name 4 of them?
Waco.
Wako,
Potentially Njonjo.
correct.
What's his face? Our current guy now. I don't know what his name is, but I feel like it starts with a K. Maybe.
I'll give you that.
Thank you. It's very hard to focus.
You said his name is?
Waco, like Waco, Texas. Okay.
I think I'm gonna say you failed this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's just accept you failed it.
I don't.
Okay. So the names are Jonjo, Karogo, Kamere, Muli, Wako, Githu Muigai, very famous guy, and Paul Kihara Karaoke. That's the one who began with the K.
Yes.
And finally, last question. I was stuck
Are
between.
you crying?
No, I'm good now.
I was stuck between 2, but okay. Which famous Marvel movie changed its name for the Japanese market? You said you loved those movies so much.
Yeah, but not like that.
Yeah, you have 10 seconds to answer this.
I feel like it might be Black Panther.
Wrong.
What was it?
It's Thor Ragnarok,
Why?
which changed the name because Ragnarok is a god that none of us know.
No,
I
it's
don't
a-
know.
it's an
So they
event.
called it Mighty Thor Battle Royale, which by the way sounds like a better.
No, it sounds dumb.
Let's go GK.
Yeah, final one for me. Mhm.
What is the tallest mountain in our solar system?
What?
It's in Mars.
But
it's in Mars.
what's the tallest mountain?
A mountain Mars.
Wrong. The Olympus Mons.
Okay.
We all know that our constitution has 18 chapters, right?
Yeah.
But how many articles does it have?
100 and no,
Wrong.
no, no, no. There's until Article 257. I know that for a fact. So let's say 270.
264.
Yeah.
The last one, yeah? What are the three main layers of soil in the soil profile?
Topsoil.
Yes, correct.
Gravel.
Bottom,
The
so
worst thing is
top, middle,
no,
bottom.
No. The worst thing about this is I'm a farmer, and if my boss sees the person who I farm with
You're
sees this,
fired,
I'm
yeah.
gonna be fired.
Just the three main ones.
Topsoil.
Correct.
Then there's the molten soil.
Wrong.
Okay, what is it?
Subsoil.
Subsoil. And then zero soil, because sub-zero. I'm just
Parent chalk. Something like that.
parent chalk.
Rock.
Parent rock. Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
So
bedrock, yeah.
I think from it, the person who asked the best trip up questions was AX. But the person I think who won this, and it pains me to say it, is Chris Epp.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
we have an AG called.
Ah, come on now. Like,
Let's move
We
there.
go. Okay, so let's go into the main segment of today's episode, which is with regards to mental health. And with this, I am not going to speak. We're going to
Okay.
hand over to AX.
all right, so before we begin having this discussion, I do want to issue a bit of a
Disclaimer.
Yeah, thank you. Disclaimer. We're going to be talking about very sensitive topics, and we're going to try to be empathetic and as compassionate as possible. If you are feeling this way, if you are feeling like you're going through mental health issues, please reach out. The world is a much better place with you in it, and the world deserves you at your best.
Yeah.
So please reach out.
Okay.
All right. So I've been noticing something quite interesting. That when you look at mental health statistics, men are almost always
Suffering more.
suffering more. Let me see if I have any right here. I don't have any specific. When compared to women, men are 4 times more likely to use substances, 4 times more likely to end their life by suicide, and they are 11 times more likely to spend time in jail and report lower life satisfaction. And I couldn't help but wonder why. So, the 2 men on this panel, let me start with a very simple question.
Okay.
When you're feeling a particular way, when you're feeling down or in the dumps, do you reach out to people?
The answer to that question is it's complicated, like the Facebook response. It's complicated. By the way, men use humor a lot to deal with their problems.
It's
just
true.
saying. But
yeah,
anyways,
they do.
it's complicated because for the longest part, at least for me, speaking as a man who also grew up with a number of women in my life, I'm the only man in my the children of my parents in my family. And so one of the things that I found very tough is actually sharing. But I think COVID, for me, did the opposite of what it did for many. For many people, it said it enclosed them because you didn't interact with even more people, couldn't take a guy for a beer and just talk nonsense. But it allowed me to hold conversations because there was nowhere to run away from with people who are of deep importance for me. For example, I held deep mental health conversations with my father. And we had very strong messages from there. I created a group of other men who we sometimes will share with regards to the pain and the sorrows we feel. So I think something has changed in the last few years on my part. But my first response to deal with a problem as a guy is to close down, reflect, spend time on my own, and then deal with it or place it under that rug, corner 3.0,
You
file
need to label it,
247.
you know exactly where
Place
it
it there in
is.
that rug at that location and deal with it decades from now when I have the time.
Okay.
Yes, I'll take it from there. Most of us do what GK has said. You get a file cabinet and then you file it for later. For most guys, I'll speak on behalf of myself and those guys that I've interacted with. We tend not to share with strangers. That's to mean therapists and all those. So we tend to keep it in our circles, yeah? And how you communicate these things is through banter, humor, shared experiences, whatever. If it's football, if it's maybe drinking, no, it's not the safest way, but guys tend to keep it within like a small group of people you can trust, and people who know you differently.
And as you said, materials as well. You know, you said football, things like that. That's actually a very serious coping mechanism for guys as a way of releasing energy. Watching a sport or getting into, a lot of men are into cars. That's another thing you get into.
So activities are very important.
Activities.
So maybe even working out, things like that. So as long as I hold this belief, and this is just my own belief. If you're busy, if you're occupied, you tend to
have a better chance of dealing with the dark times.
More or less. More or less, yeah.
So my question to both of you is therefore this. Because I noticed that both of you are dancing around the fact that men don't like talking about their problems.
Yes.
Why is that? Is it a matter of trust? Is it a matter of that society expects men to be strong and powerful all the time? And so because of those expectations, you may feel that you can't allow yourself a moment of weakness.
I think it's a mix of both. I feel, for example, as a guy, and as in my own experiences, one of the things that gives me purpose in my life is solving other people's problems, is being the strong hand for other people, and being the one that is there. That gives me purpose. It makes me want to wake up in the morning. So when it comes to dealing with the internal, it becomes very difficult, because when we deal with issues, at least from my perspective, when we deal with issues, it comes from a very objective way. Someone comes and cries and tells you, oh, this guy broke up with me. You know, we'll go through the subject matter. We'll say, okay, criteria. Have you followed this criteria? This is how you get over it. You know, this we need to do. We need to take you to a club. We need to do this. There's a way in which we deal that is very objective based. You remove the emotion out of the issue.
I was about to say,
and so when it comes to personal and the emotion, it then becomes a bit of a tangle that we can't really unwind. And then second, you spoke of trust, and I think trust is very important to men in my experience, because when you're talking with people and you feel that the information will seep, there is nothing worse to me than feeling other people feel bad for me or feel I'm weak. There's something about that. And so when I feel that information is not secure, that me and my weakness is not secure, then I'm not going to share. And many people, when they're burnt once bitten, twice shy, it never happens again.
No, I completely understand. Like, I don't think this is a gender thing. Like, no one likes knowing that in a moment of vulnerability, that vulnerability is exposed to somebody you don't want to know, somebody that you don't really want, who isn't in your circle. Chrisam, what do you think?
No offense to anyone, right?
Okay, why did you look at me?
Because you're the only female in this table. And I'm going to go gender kidogo, right? So for most guys growing up, you're told you're supposed to be the pillar of your family. So you're supposed to provide for your family, protect your family, be that guy they go to, right? And so for a lot of people, mental health disorders or problems come in when you feel inadequate, you feel like you can't provide for yourself, those feelings, right? So for most guys, they look at that and they're like, okay, now that I can't provide, instead of me sitting here and wallowing in that, why don't I go out and try and fend for my family,
so like
right?
Action-oriented.
Action, yes. That's why most guys be like, instead of me going and talking about how I'm feeling, because I can't provide for myself, why don't I go out and try to do something? So for most guys who've grown up knowing that. Number two is, if I'm supposed to be the strength, the pillar of my family, and I'm giving, quote unquote, giving in to the voices in my head, then it means not only will I be affected, but that will trickle down to the wife, the kids, and all that. So sometimes you have to present
show
this image of strength, and project it so that the people chini yako also can.
And on your first point, you talked about how when you're at the points in which a man is normally at his weakness, and I've watched a number of videos of celebrities, especially Kenyan celebrities, giving interviews about their lowest moments, and they have a continual thread. It is normally when you've sort of pushed yourself too far financially and made a risk that has failed or backfired, when you're in huge debt, when you can't find a job, when you can't provide, when people look to you, and even when they show you pity, not pity, but when they give you an arm to lean on, you see it as pity. And so I think, yes, there's a common, to agree with Chris, there's a common thread between providing and being there for people and mental illnesses to some extent.
Okay, so I have 2 more questions and then we'll have to wrap up this conversation, but it will be an ongoing discussion. So my first question is there a difference between being vulnerable and being weak? Right? Because we have all agreed that there is this expectation placed upon men, whether it is fair or not, I don't think it's fair, that men are supposed to be strong all the time. No matter what it takes, you have to be strong. Well, the opposite, is the opposite of strength, can you still be strong and vulnerable?
I don't know. But let me use a Kenyan example right now, right? Say I live in Kileleshwa and I'm going through issues because I can't pay school fees for my kid, whose school fees is 50,000 a month or a term, right? And then I start breaking down. There's a man living in Kibera who is going through similar or even worse problems than me.
Half what you want, sometimes a quarter.
Exactly. So he will look at me and wonder, what's wrong with this man here?
I've made it happen. I would say
I need to make a point about that after this.
I would say that maybe the question is not about being strong and being vulnerable, but being vulnerable and being weak around there. Because the thing about vulnerability and weakness and vulnerability and strength, you can be strong and vulnerable, but the finding that line, that line between vulnerability and weakness, for many of us, is impossible to find. And so it becomes easier to create that wall of strength and not showcase vulnerability, because vulnerability can easily lead to weakness.
Is it that finding that line between being vulnerable and being weak is hard to find, or is it that because you're expected to be strong all the time, any deviation from that is the opposite of strength,
it's seen as
which
weakness.
is weak.
It's seen as weakness.
It's seen as weak, exactly.
But is that fair? Is it fair that we place this burden upon the men in our society to be everything to everyone at all times and have nothing to themselves?
My favorite rapper, one of the favorite lines he says is, he's very woke, "That's the way it is." It's Tupac, by the way. And there's a song called "That's the Way It Is." And he's not talking about this issue at all. But sometimes I think when it comes to these situations of is it fair, is it unfair, I feel that's just the way it is. But I don't know if it's going to change. That's just the way it is. And as I said in the beginning, that we in ourselves find our purposes from doing these things, from being those pillars, from being that strong. So when you take it away and then now say, what next? What is my purpose then in giving to the family? You find it within
yourself.
It's really
the issue with that is, if you're vulnerable, there are men who will look at you as weak.
Absolutely.
If you're vulnerable,
so it's not like society; it's other men.
No.
It's both.
There's still women who will look at you as weak, and they want a man's man.
Yeah.
Right? I've had conversation with some female friends of mine, not in this setting, but somewhere else, and they want a man who projects manliness.
Strength.
Some of them, they look at, you're talking about Thor, a man who looks very masculine, akina Hercules, whatever, those people. You want those people. You don't want this akina Sheldon, who look fragile, kidogo. You don't want that type of man. You want a man who oozes masculinity. And part of oozing masculinity is, if you're being vulnerable, you'll be vulnerable in your own circle
by yourself,
of guys.
or being within your guys. And sometimes, as I said, and someone laughed at me, some ladies, I think it was you who laughed at me.
Okay, first of all.
A friend of mine was going through a hard time. And so I didn't know how to communicate about the hard time. So what I did, I took him for nyama. And then the whole time, we didn't talk about that hard time.
Yes.
And then we went home and we played some PlayStation.
I didn't laugh. Okay.
And then we finished.
You're a good friend.
And we didn't talk about that hard time at all.
Yeah.
But he knew and I knew that I'm here for him if he needs it.
Yeah.
And that unspoken communication, by the way, is extremely therapeutic.
Very important.
Yeah.
Good man, GK.
Okay, I think we're going to leave the discussion here. The reason why we're having this discussion right now is because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, right? So one more thing as we end and move on to the next segment is that just because somebody else has it worse doesn't mean that what you're going through is illegitimate.
Yeah,
like you are still suffering, you are still in pain, and you should do something about it. Don't hide behind the lie of somebody else has it worse, therefore I'm fine. No, deal with it. We will make the time. Deal with it, please.
But also remember, just because you're going through something, remember someone else is going through worse.
Yeah.
Take that as a positive in your life.
Not even as a positive. Like remember that, because it reminds you to be kind to other people and be compassionate to them, to treat them the way you yourself want to be treated in that moment.
You know what? Those messages the two of you have done, tag teaming, beautiful. So that is where we're going to end Work in Progress today. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll be here with you next time.
Bye.